And what I'm hoping to do is disclose and let people know about what happened, make this a transparent issue so that in the future, people will be less trusting of being told to do something that potentially could harm their bodies or could harm them in some other way.
Ken Paxton, Attorney General from the great state of Texas, here in my home state, is coming out with guns a-blazing. He has not stopped. It makes you wonder, right? This is the reason why the enemy was so focused on the Attorney General, because he has the goods and he is willing to do what the American people need an Attorney General to do, and that is take people like Pfizer to court over their lies to us. I want to read you something really quick, and then I'm going to jump right back to it. And we've got Ken Paxton on the show. You do not want to miss this. If you took the Pfizer vaccine, you need to listen to this. If you know someone who did, you need to listen to this. Because what they have done and how they have lied to the American public and how the government fed into those lies is going to be very important to you and your family. But let me read this first. The Nuremberg Military Tribunal's decision in the case of the United States versus Karl Brandt includes what is now called the Nuremberg Code. It is a 10-point statement delimiting permissible medical experimentation on human subjects. Meaning that after the Second World War, after the horrors that happened in Nazi Germany to the people that lived there, the experiments that were being conducted on human beings without their knowledge, the forcible medical, let's just say, experiments and sadistic actions that were being conducted on the Jews and others, there became a Nuremberg Code. It was determined that people had the right to make decisions for their own bodies as best as they see fit. Meaning you cannot be forced into taking a vaccination. You cannot be forced into an experiment because the government says it's going to be better for the whole. You cannot have an experiment conducted on you without your knowledge. That means you have to sign off if you're going to volunteer for any kind of government trial. But that's not what happened during COVID. What happened during COVID was something so unbelievable to me. It flipped everything that we have learned throughout history on its head. It threw away all of the common sense that had been established by law, even international law. It was basically line the pockets of Pfizer and Moderna and all of these so-called pharmaceuticals at the expense of us, at our expense. Our children were locked down. We were locked down. There were commercials out there, propaganda threatening that if you didn't get the vaccine, you were going to kill your grandma. You're going to kill your grandpa. That if you walked around without a mask, you were going to kill the public. So what happened? Ken Paxton took a look into this, just like Senator Rand Paul. Continuous pursuit of the truth. Investigation. Don't let them get away with it. And he is alleging that the pharmaceutical giant lied about the effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccine to you, knowingly lied about it. In a press release that he gave to us yesterday, as well as Fox News, Paxton's office accused Pfizer of, quote unquote, unlawfully misrepresenting the effectiveness of the company's COVID-19 vaccine and attempting to censor public discussion of the product. Paxton said Pfizer's claim that its vaccine possessed 95% efficacy against the infection was highly misleading. And according to the court documents, it was somewhere near just 75%. It was a full-on lie. It was a complete and utter lie that dragged my husband and his co-workers in the government into getting the vaccine, or they were going to be removed from the office. They were all told that the efficacy of this vaccine, that 95% plus, you take this vaccine, no one else is going to get sick. You're not going to get sick. And they were lied to. And all the people who took this vaccine that believed that they were taking something that was good, that was going to help save lives, may have in effect worked against some of those that took it. And there's a lot of evidence out there that there were people that had an adverse reaction to the vaccine. This was never, ever supposed to happen, folks. This was not supposed to happen in this day and age. And we are going to talk to Attorney General Ken Paxton momentarily. But first, let's talk about Super Beets. Super Beets, we could all benefit from heart healthy energy. Super Beets Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure. They're plant-based and stimulant-free, so you get a green boost without the jitters. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. How does that make you feel? How does it make me feel? It makes me feel fantastic. That's why I take Super Beets with me everywhere I go, whether I'm traveling overseas, whether I'm in the country doing national travel, speaking engagements, whatever it is, I'm taking my Super Beets because I travel everywhere and I pick up everything. Believe me. So I've got to be healthy inside and out. Super Beets is also trusted by collegiate athletes and pro sports teams because it supports performance and endurance. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews and a free full-size bag of turmeric chews valued at $25 by going to americalovesbeets.com. That's americalovesbeets.com. Get this exclusive offer at americalovesbeets.com. I've got Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton here on the show from, of course, our great state of Texas. Thank you so much for being on the show, Ken. The news broke yesterday about the lawsuit. Obviously, I should have expected that you were working on multiple lawsuits. You're not just a one-man band. You're like going after all the bad guys in government all at once, which makes me actually realize this is the reason why they were coming after you with such viciousness. They wanted you to stop. I mean, they wanted to stop you in their tracks, and they actually tried. Many of your enemies tried that, but you broke the news yesterday that you were suing Pfizer for censorship and for misrepresentation of the COVID-19 vaccine efficacy. Talk a little bit about that. What led you to this lawsuit? What was it that sparked your curiosity and attention that you devoted your time to targeting probably one of the biggest pharmaceutical giants in the world?
Yeah, so obviously when COVID came out, none of us knew anything. And I was looking at getting the vaccine and then I ended up getting it. So it slowed that process down because I took the monoclonal and I couldn't get the vaccine. But then I started wondering why all this pressure on people to get the vaccine, because if you get the vaccine, supposedly you're protected, right? So why do you care if everybody else gets it? Why are they threatening people with their jobs and being banished from society, basically, if you don't get the vaccine? It didn't make sense to me. So we've had several years, started realizing that there were no real trials on this. And because of the liability protection that the federal government gives them, it looks like, and the information that we've been able to gather over the last year or so, it looks like they claimed that it had 95% effectiveness, when in reality it might have been closer to 1% or less. And they claim that, it wasn't going to spread because of the vaccine, and certainly those results were not true because people that got the vaccine also spread the virus. And in certain populations, more people died that had the vaccine than who didn't get the vaccine. So these are all things that Pfizer began to know, and if I know them, they know them. And then they went on to try to suppress the coverage of it and basically put people, banish them from social media if they actually dared to question the effectiveness.
I felt like I couldn't question anything. I couldn't question what was happening at the hospitals. I couldn't question what was going on with the vaccine. I was stunned how they even went after Senator Rand Paul, Dr. Rand Paul, when he said that, the science proved that people with natural immunity should skip COVID vaccines. I mean, that was something that was just simple science that we figured out. I mean, okay, well, people who were naturally immune to this now shouldn't even have this vaccine. Do you, or have you figured out, or can you even talk about it, why they were pursuing this path? I mean, obviously it wasn't because they cared about our health. Obviously they knew what was going on. Was this all about making money, or was this about controlling a population? What was going on here?
Well, I think from Pfizer's standpoint, it was about making billions of dollars. So you made it. Some of these other pharmaceutical companies did the same thing. From the government standpoint, I think they saw it as an opportunity to control people's behavior and try to test out what they could get away with. And as they found out, they got away with a lot.
Right.
And what I'm hoping to do is disclose and let people know about what happened, make this a transparent issue so that in the future, people will be less trusting of being told to do something that potentially could harm their bodies or could harm them in some other way.
Right. And this could really backfire, and it really has, on the government. But one of the things that surprised me was how many people were so willing to walk straight into, I would call it lambs being led to the slaughter, right? And others that were being forced into it by their employers. So if you worked for the government, and you and I talked about this, like my husband, like many of his friends working at the Defense Department or in other agencies throughout the government, they basically threatened that if you didn't get the vaccine, you weren't coming into the office. So they were literally forcing them to get the vaccine. And then a lot of people were saying, well, I was in the military, I was vaccinated. So this is the reason why I'm going to get this one. But now they regret it. They regret it because they were lied to about the vaccine. The vaccine, its efficacy, what was it? When you looked at it, I mean, you're saying around 75%. Is that what the document you have, discloses? But we don't even know all the answers to that.
We think that the numbers could be significantly lower. They could be as low as 1% or less.
Oh my gosh.
So
okay, let me reiterate that I was completely wrong on this. 1% or less effective.
Yeah, they used a statistic that is viewed as unreliable by saying it was 95% reliable. That statistic that they used, when you look at it in other circumstances and other situation, has been viewed as unreliable. The number that they should have used, that we think they should have used, was closer to 1%. Now we'll find out through discovery what that actual number is, but it wasn't 95%. I think we could see that just from anecdotal evidence that people that got the vaccine, and they have actually started admitting that people that got the vaccine were still going to get COVID and that they could still transmit. So then it became even more unclear to me, why are they pushing this on us when it doesn't work? It doesn't work to protect you, and it doesn't work to protect anybody else. Why is it that everybody has to get it? And then, of course, they never talked about side effects because they had never tested it. And the testing came when they made us all take it, and they forced us to take it. So this was a pretty bad thing to do to the American people because they did it on fear. The American people didn't know about it. We didn't know anything about COVID. We had every reason to believe that they were telling us the truth. And to take advantage of the American public like this and then potentially cause them long-term harm with a vaccine that sometimes hurts people, that's something pretty bad to do, whether it's a company or a government.
Well, this is what was really fascinating to me, AG, was when the illegal migrants were crossing the border, they were not being forced to take the vaccine. In fact, they didn't even offer them the vaccine because Pfizer did not want to be sued in case something went sideways with the vaccine, because these were foreign nationals. For some reason, and I read this in Reuters, the U.S. citizen could be forced into taking the vaccine, and we couldn't sue if something went sideways. But a foreign national crossing the border could. Do you know anything about that, or do you understand how that's put together?
Yes, there was a federal law that was passed in the 80s that if a pharmaceutical company created a vaccine that was approved by the FDA, then there's no liability to them if the vaccine goes wrong. In other words, you and I, if we're harmed by that vaccine, and the idea was, I mean, it had some good intentions, which was we want development of vaccines, and so we don't want them if something goes wrong when they're trying to actually do something good, we don't want them to go bankrupt because one vaccine went wrong. But the problem with that is now they don't have any incentive to do any trials, to even tell you if they find out that there's something wrong. And then I was questioning this whole time, from day one, why is it that these people can cross the border, we stop them, we give them money, we give them a cell phone, we give them transportation, but we won't vaccinate them? The federal government then says to you, well, you have to do this or you're going to lose your job. And they try to force this through OSHA. They tried to force it onto healthcare workers. They forced it on the military. They forced it on everybody they could because they knew they could, and there was no liability. And so that's what we're saying now in Texas. We're saying, wait, you may have gotten away with this at the federal level, but there are state laws that protect consumers from fraudulent activity by corporation, and no federal law can protect you against a state law that says you can't do it.
You know, this is what it's so mind blowing because there are so many Americans. I remember telling people about this and they're like, no, that can't be true. I said, no, it is absolutely true. It is absolutely true that this is the difference between what happens to U.S. citizens. You're a lawyer, you can explain it clearly, and what happens when you cross the border and you're an illegal. And I can tell you this, I have a friend who I saw not too long ago, just last month. She's in the military and she was actually in San Francisco and she was based out there. She worked for U.S. government agencies and is also with the National Guard. And she was tormented by her superiors because she refused to take the vaccine. And they tormented her so badly that they ended up putting her in charge of what they called, it was kind of like the crew of people, the misfit crew, they called them the misfits. They put her in charge of that. They locked her down in her apartment, would not let her out except for when she had to take out and go out and do her duties with the misfit crew. And then they locked her back down, and then they would walk her into an office every day and yell at her until she couldn't take it anymore. Yell at her because she would not get the vaccine and threaten her career and threaten her until finally her husband had to come down, and he's a military official as well, and had to hold them accountable. And then she removed herself from that situation. It was that bad in the government. It was that bad. People were being harassed that much. What do you think? And I'm just asking you this. What do you think led to that? Led to people harassing one another, led to people fighting one another? I mean, there had to have been something that the government put pressure on our agencies to make sure that people were vaccinated, and especially in the Department of Defense.
Yeah. So at the time, my daughter was in the Air Force. My son-in-law was in the Air Force. My son-in-law was in the Army, and my nephew was in the Navy. 3 of them were forced to take the vaccine. The other wouldn't do it. My nephew wouldn't, and he was basically kicked out of the Navy. It is shocking to me, given that we didn't know what this vaccine did, and we had no test results, but the government said, doesn't matter, we're still going to make you, and we're going to force you to take a vaccine that we don't know in the long run might hurt you greatly and maybe won't help you at all, but you have to do it or you're going to be punished by either being treated poorly in your job or you're going to lose your job, which is why we ended up suing the federal government so many times to try to stop this. And we were successful in most cases. The reason we sued our cities, we sued our counties, we sued our school districts, all these governmental entities, for some reason, there's this idea from the top, from Joe Biden, that we're going to force you to do it. Why that is, why they wanted that control over our healthcare and over our bodies, I have no idea. But there's nothing that happened that turned out good.
Let me ask you this. Through discovery, what are you hoping to get from Pfizer? And are you concerned, looking at the history of many of these pharmaceutical giants? Look, I'm all about medicine and the future discoveries and cures and giving companies like Pfizer and Moderna and others the incentive to do research and development that will save lives. But I'm also somebody who believes that they should be held accountable if they do something wrong or if something goes sideways like it did with COVID. What are you hoping to gain from the companies? And are you concerned that they're going to try to destroy the documentation before you can get it? Or because you're up against hundreds of billions of dollars and powerful people that will do almost anything to cover up what has happened. mean, this was a global issue, not even just a national issue, but an international issue with all kinds of future implications.
Look, my goal is really for the American people to know what actually happened. So my goal is to find the truth. What actually happened? What did they know? When did they know it? Why did they make these decisions? I want my state to understand it. I want the country to understand it. Partly because it's a prophylactic against it happening again. If you don't learn from your history, and if we don't have the information, we can't learn from the history. But then I hope that federal law will change to at least hold them accountable when they know the truth, that they can't get away with lying about it just because it's a vaccine. So if they know it causes harm, or that it's not effective, or that they're lying about the percentage of effectiveness by maneuvering the statistics, they should then be held accountable if they're not telling us the truth. And I think they should have the obligation to do some testing. There ought to be some like scientific minimum of testing before they start experimenting on people like you and me.
Yeah, thank you. I would really appreciate that. That would be really good. I do not want to be a guinea pig in their lab out in the public. I mean, I think that could have a lot of... We all were. And you also are focused on censorship. And before I let you go, I want to talk a little bit about that. Ask you a few questions. I know you're a busy man and I got to let you go soon. But as far as this lawsuit is concerned, another key aspect of it is that Pfizer's collusion with the social media companies. And that's pretty terrifying because this is a way to spread lies and propaganda. We know that. Those that control the media companies kind of control the narrative. So how does your lawsuit focus on that?
Yeah, so we think that they did pressure these media companies. So we are focused on finding out those connections, because we also know the Biden administration pressured the social media companies to stop people from talking negatively about the vaccine or about not taking the vaccine or about what the government was doing as it related to COVID. It was like, we're living in a communist country. When you have collusion between companies and the government about speech, now we're talking about the First Amendment and affecting our First Amendment rights. And their argument has been, well, we're just a company. We are a company that's being told what to do by the government. That changes the calculus on whether you as a company can eliminate free speech. I think it changes it dramatically, and that's what they were trying to do. They were all colluding together between the big pharma companies that were doing the vaccine, the big tech companies, the Googles and the others, and then the federal government. They were all colluding to give us misinformation and to misinform the American public about a very significant issue, and then using the power of government to threaten them in all kinds of ways, including losing their livelihood. And that's a real problem, in my opinion, and should be disclosed to the American public.
Absolutely, it should. Do we even have any idea how many people were censored? How many Texans were censored? Is it ever possible to know that?
I think we could find out through litigation. Now, if they destroy documents at this point after they're sued and we find out, then there's sanctions and all kinds of problems for them, potential criminal penalties. That's a whole nother ballgame. Hopefully they'll turn over what they owe us in the discovery process, and it will allow us to understand and tell the American people, here are the facts. Here's what you were told. Here's what would actually happen, and let people know, hey, this is a reality. And next time, maybe you should ask more questions, and we should be less trusting of the people that are trying to cram this down our throats. And as I've often said, I never understood why they cared so much about me having a vaccine when if the other person has the vaccine, they're supposedly protected both against getting it and two, transmitting it. So why do they care so much? But certainly it didn't seem like they really believed it, or they wouldn't have been pushing it down everybody's throat in a forceful and threatening way. Right.
Absolutely. Great point there. And do you think publicly traded companies, do you think it's okay for them to censor U.S. citizens? I mean, if they're being publicly traded, I mean, is that like something that we should look at as well? Is that something you're looking at?
So the First Amendment really applies to government limiting our speech. Individual corporations can do what they want, but when they're being told by the government to do it, to me, that changes the analysis. It's now the government forcing these companies or colluding with these companies to take away our First Amendment. If companies want to do that, people can say, well, okay, fine, I'm not going to do it. Now, we have some of these big tech companies that are operating under special protections under Section 230 of I think, the Communications Act. And under that protection, they're able to basically say they're not a publisher, but then they make decisions and they discriminate against people based on what speech they give. And now they can't be sued for any kind of slander or libel, but also they're making publishing decisions, and they should be open to being sued if they are making those decisions. They can't have their cake and eat it too. And in this case, many of these companies, many of these big tech companies, are protected from liability, just like the vaccine manufacturers were protected from liability. And then it allows them to basically do whatever they want to do, and nobody else can do what they're doing, but they have special protection.
That to me is, and that's something that I know people have been looking at for some time, removing that special protection from them if they're acting as a publisher. I mean, I don't think they can't have their cake and eat it too. Just like you said, they can't have their cake and eat it too. Okay, what about all the government employees that were fired who were unwilling to take the shot, or, military personnel who walked away? What happens if you discover through this lawsuit, which I believe you already have to some extent, that Pfizer was lying, that we were being lied to, that the people who stood their ground actually did the right thing? Do they have any remedy? Can they get recourse for what happened to them?
I'm actually not looked closely at what the remedies would be, because we haven't finished our case, but we will definitely be looking at those remedies. We're using a remedy that we can use, but I think part of the problem with the remedy, at least against the vaccine manufacturers, is they're protected. Now, what do I think should happen? I think the federal government, all these agencies and all these employers that fire these people should give them back pay and offer them their job back. If they don't want the job, at least give them back pay for the harm that you caused them when they made the right decision about their health. And at least had the right, whether they make the right decision or wrong decision, it was their right to make the decision about health, not some government organization and not some business. That should be up to you. It's your body. It's your life.
Well, and let me tell you, that was what I opened the show with today about the Nuremberg Code. And the reason why these 10 points that make up the code are so important for all of humanity. It's so that we can make informed decisions about our own body. And we shouldn't be forced or coerced into taking a shot or an experiment being conducted on us, knowingly or unknowingly, on anyone on planet Earth. It is a human right that we have this type of, I think, self-preservation of our own body and our own families, and our children, and that should not be forced on us. And I am so grateful and I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I got the flu vaccine. I'm not, you could agree with it or not. I did not get the Pfizer vaccine at all, or Moderna. That was my decision. I did get the J&J shot, the one and done. And then they told me it was like 3 days later that I was going to probably get a blood clot and die. I don't know. There was just something weird with that shot altogether. But I believe we do have the right over our own bodies to make those decisions, especially when it comes to these vaccines and when they have not been tested. Thank you so much, Attorney General, for doing what you do. You're awesome. What's the next step? Where do you go from here? Where are we going to see the latest and next development in this case? Do you have a trial set? What's going on?
Well, yeah. So we filed the lawsuit, so now it's all about us proving our case and them defending. But there's obviously a long discovery process, and sometimes cases settle, sometimes they don't. But what I want is the truth. I want to know what happened. I want the American people to know what happened, because I think they owe it to us.
Before we wrap this up, I want to tell you all about HelloFresh, great sponsor of the Sara Carter Show. Thank you so much, HelloFresh. And thank you so much for making my life so much easier. I love getting your supply of dinners every Friday to my house. So I get 3 meals every Friday and I spread them out throughout the week. And I love it because I don't have to think about it. I get these delicious meals. Like there's one called the Thai burger. It is so good. I can't even begin to tell you. It's mouthwatering. And that's not something that I would think of making myself, right? My husband absolutely loved it and we love it. You can make it spicy Thai or lighter, or you could just make a regular burger for your kids. It allows you to do that. You get all of these fresh supplies at home, and your family is vested in making dinner, and you're having dinner with your family. And that's about family values. The holidays are right around the corner, and HelloFresh can help take the stress out of dinner by delivering everything you need to cook up a tasty meal right to your door, just as I said, saving you tons of time and money. Just like always, HelloFresh's ingredients travel from the farm to your door, so you know they're fresh. And everything arrives pre-portioned, so you can get right to cooking quickly. So I want you guys to go to HelloFresh.com/Sara Carter Free and use code Sara Carter Free for a free breakfast for life. Look at these recipes. They're amazing. That's one free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/Sara Carter Free with code Sara Carter Free. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Hey folks, I want to say thank you first to Attorney General Ken Paxton. Thank you so much for all you do. You are a true patriot, a great American, and you are fighting the good fight for all of us, doing exactly what you said you would be doing. I'm so grateful to call you my friend. Folks, make sure you subscribe to the Sara Carter Show here on your favorite podcast app. It really helps. We bring great people on like Attorney General Ken Paxton, who will fill you in on the latest and the greatest details of what is happening in our country so that we can be a part of it and we can help him fight the good fight. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless every single person who stood up to Pfizer, Moderna, and our government in this fight against, I guess, government control and COVID. And God bless the great state of Texas and Attorney General Ken Paxton.